Hello and welcome back to Wyoming Watch from the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle. I'm Noah Zahn, your state government reporter here. On Wednesday, U.S. Senator John Barrasso and U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Doug Collins were in Cheyenne to meet with Wyoming veterans and hear some of their thoughts and concerns. Our crime and public safety reporter, Ivy Secrest, was at that meeting to hear what people had to say. This week on Wyoming Watch, we're sharing some excerpts from that meeting, followed by a Q&A Ivy had with Barrasso and Collins. Here's that conversation now.
Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone here. It is wonderful to have with us the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins. You know, Doug, last year, Cynthia and I did a telephone town hall for veterans all around Wyoming. Tim Shepard was on the call as well. Talked to Doug, he talked to veterans all around the state, and I said, I'd love to come to Wyoming. And we've talked to him, and we've arranged for it to happen today. We were at the Veterans Center already, we were in KFBC radio. These are the men and women that I know from around the state who mean so much to other veterans, representative of them. We were on the radio today, and the announcer asked me, John, why are you involved? Why is you? So I pulled out my dad's discharge papers from World War II. He signed up 3 days after Pearl Harbor when active duty didn't come home till it was over. Wow. All of you knew Bobby and her dad from Thermopolis, World War II, Japan occupation, Purple Heart in Korea. So we have a sense of just obligation and commitment and love of the military and our veterans and want to do everything that we can to help. And I love bringing the head of the Veterans Administration here today. Doug, I want to turn it over to you, and then Lisa's here, your wife, who's a retired teacher. Doug and Cynthia were in the House of Representatives together. He was in the state legislature in Georgia, and he was overseas and deployed in Iraq to an air base north of Baghdad, so he knows the battle. And I wanted to have him here, so we'll go around at some point and talk, but I wanted to let you start introducing yourself and to talk about issues that you want to talk about. And Tim will take it over for questions and answers, but these guys are just the men and women here, the best and the brightest and the hardest working, incredible people that has kept our country safe.
Appreciate it. Well, Senator, thanks for that. I appreciate it. You and Cynthia have been great friends here as well. The whole delegation here has been very responsive and very helpful to all. But it's good to be in this room. For me, I'm with family and friends, and I think what I found a year ago, though, and really a year in now, I've got about another 2 weeks or so before I officially 1 year. The boss made 1 year yesterday. Yes. So he's off doing world things now. I'm doing exactly what he told me to do, and that's when I asked him. I said, Mr. Trump, Mr. President Trump, what do you want me to do? He said, take care of veterans. I said, I can handle that, and that's what we've done. And over the year, there's been a lot, and I think it's been really interesting because when we first came in, I rightfully had to sort of earn the place of saying, here's what I want to do, and show you that I wasn't just another round of bureaucratic crap from the VA. And I think we've proven that over the years. I think we've shown that we've taken on things head on. It doesn't mean we're finished. It doesn't mean we're fixed. It doesn't mean that the VA gets it all right. We're still one of the most bureaucratic organizations in the world and the most risk-averse organizations I've ever met in my life. I'm surprised some of my employees make it to work. I love them to death, but they have been but what is so great, and I got a lot of my great employees over here, they're great folks that work for VA, that watching them bloom this year, when I tell them to go do it and I got their back and they believe me, it's been amazing. Let me tell you how that has happened. When I told them to go get stuff done, here's one of the things. We had over 260,000 backlog cases, over 125 days. We have been, and this was as of March, really, of last, first day I stepped in, but it was still that high. We started a program to get it done. We have actually been under 100,000 here in the last couple of weeks, and we will be completely under 100,000 by the end of this month. We're on our way to 60,000, which is, nobody has records on when that was the last time that happened in the VA. VBA has done an amazing job. And here's the other thing that what I'm very happy about, average days to completion of a claim was 140-ish days when I stepped in. We're at about 80 right now. And if I can get DOD's help, which I'm gonna talk to Pete and continue to remind Pete of this stuff, he gets me the records quicker, I make you a promise. DOD gets us the records as we can need them. We will have start to finish claims somewhere within 30 to 35 days. Okay, that's what it takes. I got great folks who want to do stuff, but have been trapped so long into what we can't do. We don't have that mentality anymore, because when we did it, I said we put the veteran first. The veteran first at the VA. Whatever we do, if we don't have a veteran walk into one of our facilities of any kind, we don't have a job. So it's about time we started acting like our constituents and our customers are the ones who actually come to our facilities, not them blessing us with their presence. We're blessed by your presence. And that's been the whole thought. We took on a huge project this year. It took 9 months. Everything in almost every group, I can see a veterans organization in this room that has not said over the last few years and talked about how the VHA, our hospital system, had problems, had issues getting in, getting out. We're measured on a measure that nobody else gets measured on, called wait times. And that was because of some mess ups at the VA on what we had. And it's not, no other hospital you go to measures wait times, but they don't have to because Congress doesn't make them. Well, we're gonna get ready to show that the wait times and stuff are getting better, because we did a reorganization of the VA. Did it within statute, we did it within budget, our current authorities, everything is there. Because what I had found is we had all kinds of policy being made everywhere. We were making great canvas, but getting nothing done. Committees were awful. We committed everything. I think we committed lunches at a certain point in time. But what I said was, I said, here's the bottom line. I want you to take everything that Congress has done. And Senator Barrasso and anybody from the House and the Senate, what have they said over the past 20-something years? Take their testimony, show what they've said. Me, as a member of Congress for 8 years, I know what I lived through. I said, go to the VSOs, see what the VSOs have said for the last 30 years. Go to GAO, go to OIG, go to everybody, see what they said. And we developed a plan, and then we went to industry. And then we went to, because we're the largest healthcare group in the country, we just don't act like it. We act like we're some, forlorn child in the back room that everybody forgot, and we're the biggest around, and we do some of the best care in the world. I'll put our prosthetics, I'll put our trauma and CTE, TBI up against anybody in the world. Our toxic exposure, I'll put it up against anybody in the world. Some of our cancer research, prostate cancer, put it up against anybody in the world. Well, I'll just tell you right now, Senator, the VA is going to start acting like the biggest on the block. We're going to start acting like we are where we are, and you're funding it very well. So we said, what is the most important thing? For those in the military here, we have we exist for that unit, that frontline unit. If you think about it, at the end of the day, it's that frontline unit that's taking the fire. If you're back in headquarters, you're making sure they have everything they need. They're not having to beg. You're getting the, well, in the VA, unfortunately, because of growth, and nobody in particular, I'm not blaming a person, party, or anybody else. We have just become so bloated on the top end and so policy driven that our hospitals couldn't get the help they needed. So what we did is we flipped it on its head. The hospitals and clinics are now the tip of the spear. Everybody else is supported. They're going to work the issues. They're going to work what needs to happen. They're going to see the veterans coming in, and they're going to send it up the chain. We cut all these visit instructions that you know of, like 18, 20, there was 20 at one point, we cut them to 5. We didn't put HSAs underneath them. We're not adding a layer of bureaucracy. I heard somebody, the only criticism, we're adding a layer of bureaucracy. Oh, dear God. No, we're actually taking what thought from industry, and that HSA will only have 1 or 2 hospitals, 3 hospitals. So like the ones here in the West, like Cheyenne and others, they can actually now focus on what matters to a rural hospital in these areas and how we can work with our community doctors. And then I'll have HSAs working Orlando and Tampa, which are growing at 30% clip. They know how to handle them. And then they report up to only 6 people who then go directly to the USH, who is the director of all of our healthcare. No more of this. We got policy under the director, the deputy. We got business line under the associate deputy. Everything is streamlined like it should be. And by the way, if you get care in Cheyenne, you're going to get the same care in Atlanta. We're not 172 places being 172 places. From now on, my hope is by the time that I leave this job, is that they'll be able to say that I've been to one VA, I've been to them all. Right now, you can't say that. Right now, if you say, I've been to one VA, I've been to one VA. That's going to stop. So these are the kind of things that we're working on. We did best medical interest now to help the community, getting out to the community. So none of this going back and forth with 2 doctors and figuring out, well, I want you to go and then get another opinion. We don't do that anymore. We just send you to the doctor. And female veterans, we put you in the place that you belong. and that is that no longer, I just signed this, I heard about this a few months ago. It was something that it made me upset. We were forcing our female veterans to go back to their primary care doctor to get their women's health needs, obstetrics and gynecological care. That's ended. They can go straight to those doctors now without having to go to their primary care. These are the simple things that sound simple up front, but we're very complicated where we are. We're making progress. We're not there yet, and I'll be the first to tell you. Every time I talk somewhere, I'll go on the message and comment for well, mine didn't work. I think, give me a break. I've been doing this here, and we've made a lot of changes, but we're getting better. But I will tell you this. I made it very clear. You're not going to scare my veterans. I don't care, frankly, if my former colleagues in the Congress, if you're a member of the press or anywhere else, you're not going to scare my veterans telling them lies. And you're not going to scare my employees. You're going to get the straight truth from me, whether they like it or not. And we're going to talk about where we are, because the only way to solve the problem is to address it head on. And that's why I've been doing these all over the country. I've been in 30 states already. In a little under a year, would have been more if we hadn't had that little detour around October, November. had to stay in town for that one. But I can't emphasize enough how much this senator right here means to me personally. He means to this state, Cynthia as well, Harriet as well. Y'all have a very large presence in Washington, D.C., and I think, we can all agree and disagree about certain things, but you can't disagree about this man's heart, this man's desire to help this state. And as I've heard you call the doctor of this state before, I think that's an understatement. I think you're really sort of the heart of a lot of what these folks say, and I do appreciate it.
The meeting in total lasted more than an hour. Kelly Ivanoff is the vice chair of the Wyoming Military Commission. Here's what he had to say to the public officials closer to the end of that meeting.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming to Wyoming. Senator Barrasso, thanks for coordinating it all and the invitation. There's a beauty in going later in the format, and that's that a lot of things have been shared. There's also an advantage for me is I get to use those words. The first ones I want to use are yours. I appreciate your comment, obviously from some of your experience, that the front line, that's the folks that are fighting the fight. And so from the Wyoming Veterans Commission, what I'm going to offer to you is our promise to work with those folks that are in the fight so that the honest conversation can happen, so that the true issues can be identified, so that their fight can be alleviated by passing back those requests for resources to you. We appreciate that you would make that comment publicly, and you'll get our promise to assist on that locally. The other is the comment that you made about anybody that goes to receive health care in Cheyenne should get the same health care that they're getting in Atlanta. Well, I 100% agree. The difference in Wyoming is our veterans are in Medicine Bow and Wright and Lovell. And we plan travel in Wyoming like folks do in Afghanistan. There's mountain ranges between them. A simple 180-mile drive this morning I thought was going to take 2.5 hours until I got to a 30-mile stretch around Glendo, which turned into 40 miles an hour with 100-foot visibility and fog for 30 miles. 37 degrees down here, 25 back in Casper, but 13 in that 30-mile stretch. Everybody in the state faces that. Our vice chair who lives in Lovell, in order to go to a VA clinic in Sheridan, has to go over the Bighorn Mountains. Same thing you're doing when you're traveling around Afghanistan. I'm not trying to compare Wyoming to Afghanistan. What I'm saying is the travel is similar. We have to actually make plans. For her to go get blood drawn at a clinic in Sheridan, the appointment's at 7 in the morning. She's either leaving the night before or she's driving all night in the dark just to get to that appointment. Then to stay to get the results in the afternoon and drive back in the dark. Those are real world constraints that the folks are living here and that we represent for the veterans across the state.
And Kelly's done 2 tours in Afghanistan, so he knows them now.
Yeah, we gotta get around. I was in Iraq, but they just shot at us all the time and mortared us. Let me address my comment and be very specific. If your person is in Iraq clinics or at Cheyenne is getting a treatment for X, that treatment's going to be the same. Now, let me tell you why I said what I said. I had a gentleman who was a double amputee, was in Salt Lake City. He moved to Hampton Roads. He was getting a treatment in Salt Lake. He went to Hampton Roads and said, this is the treatment I've been getting. I want to continue to get that treatment here, and was told by a doctor in Hampton Roads the VA does not do that treatment. That's what I'm talking about. Now, thank you for also advertising for the new reorg, because inadvertently you just did. Because what we did is by having an HSA, a health services account person, who instead of one visiting director who has a lot of areas and a lot of different places to have to deal with, in which some of my center directors could never, access as they needed to, they're now going to have an HSA who handles only 2 or 3 areas in Wyoming, and the areas that have issues, so they understand that we got these drive time problems, we've got these other things that are going on, and so that's the way we even this out. I never can compare a urban Orlando to a Cheyenne. There would. But I also can tell you that you're going to do the same kind of treatments when we're there, so that is for our employees and for our veterans, they can get a consistency of care that is excellent. So it may take us a little bit of different how we get there, but I think when we get there, that's my meaning behind that you're going to get a care across the VA that is bar none.
And I appreciate that. So my follow-up to that is, we appreciate the announcement, the offer on the reorg. What I think we can offer you in return is being part of innovative solutions to address the rural and frontier sort of situations, because the solutions are going to be different. We appreciate being a part of that.
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I've never wanted to think that I can solve that North Georgia boy understands what's going on in Wyoming. Just like you wouldn't really understand chicken trucks coming from Commerce to Gainesville. It would take you 50 minutes to get around a chicken truck from Commerce to Gainesville. Anybody wants to know about that, see me after.
That's quite a picture you paint, Mr. Secretary.
You don't want to be behind it, but you know what it smells like? Money.
Money. All right, and now we'll go to Coyote Park.
Following the meeting, Ivy and another reporter from Channel 5 met with Barrasso and Collins to ask a few follow-up questions. Here's that now.
So just my initial question is, you're doing these all across the country, but can you just talk a little bit about why it's important to be in these communities and hear this feedback?
It's important because you can't run an organization as large as mine from behind a desk. In fact, I think we've tried it too long that way, in which everything comes upward and we just get it filtered after filtered after filtered after filtered. I don't want filtered. I want to know what my veterans are experiencing every day. So it's easy to get out, and like I said, doing it over 30 states in the time. And when you got great, federal partners like you have here in Wyoming, especially with the senator, it makes it easier, but also cuts through what I call the layers of stuff that people can't say, well, I can't get to the top. Well, I'm as high as it gets. So, it's easy for me to go in and say, let's try to fix this, let's work on it. So that's the easy way for me to manage, is just simply being out with people.
And of course, we want to make sure the veterans of Wyoming get what they have earned. These are the men and women who bore the battle, worn the uniform, and have put their lives on the line to keep us safe and free. So it's great to have the Secretary of Veterans Affairs here to meet with the men and women of Wyoming, those who have served, to make sure they're getting what they need. And that's what this whole thing was about. We did a telephone town hall meeting last year, along with Cynthia Lummis and the congressional delegation, had a chance to hear from veterans from all around the state. And at the time, I want to come and actually meet people face to face, and that's what we're doing here today.
Awesome. Fantastic. You just heard a myriad of different complaints doing with transportation, quality of care, all these kinds of things. What are some of your key takeaways that maybe you weren't aware of before speaking to our veterans?
I'm not going to say nothing surprised me. in an organization as large as we are, it's you always hear something. There are current themes, and transportation is always a current theme. How do people get here, and how do we do that? But you think about it in terms of how many that we have to care for, and only so many limited facilities, and how people get there. The same is true in the private sector, public sector issues. We just have it spent more special because we're dealing with veterans, a more specific group of people. I think there are other things though we're changing. I think they're changing the attitude to VA. I don't want my VA employees to sort of feel like they can't take a step forward and talk about what they do because the press or elected officials, somebody's going to say, well, the VA's doing this wrong. It's okay. I've told every one of our employees, I would rather see them out trying new things, making mistakes, than sitting back worrying about what would happen. At the end of the day, it should be all about a veteran coming in. And, there's an old biblical statement that said when the stalls are clean, that means the oxen aren't there. What that really means is when everything's clean, it means you're not doing anything.
I'd rather have people coming and getting their care and seeing things that we need to improve on than nothing being done, everybody just sitting back. So this, to me, it was just a great example of a well organization. It's a healthy organization that acknowledges where we can work better and going to make it better.
The comments that I heard from veterans who've been receiving services throughout the state, and some of them are great distances from here, is that this is a frontier state, extra challenges due to the distances. We have a high percentage of the population of Wyoming who have served in the military, and we're doing a lot right to help our veterans, and we can always do better. We just heard ways to improve the system.
Perfect. And I know you touched a little bit on the reorganization
Yes.
too. Just being, here in Cheyenne, being so close to the VA, at least our station is, a lot of people have been kind of reaching out saying like, hey, do you know what's going on? Like, people are concerned about their care being impacted. So I guess kind of what do you have to say about what this reorganization is and what people need to be aware of?
Not to be lighthearted about it, but I think the only concern on care that they need to be worried about is how much better care they're going to get. And I think that's the really, again, it's taking any organization and putting people at the right places at the right time. If you had a football team that only had quarterbacks, they would never win. If you had a football team that only had centers, they would never win. What we've had at the VA was a large group of people, many times not placed in the proper places. Care comes when you have the right people at the right place at the right time. Nothing about this reorganization affects the local VAMC except it's going to have, at the top end, the executive director is going to have better access to quicker answers, to quicker care that runs all the way to the top. For a VAMC director beforehand, that's what we call our VA medical centers, VAMCs. For a VAMC to have direct access to me, to a secretary before me, was probably slim to none. I actually now make phone calls for VAMC directors. They know that they can, and when they talk about hiring, when they talk about how they need to get people in, we and then can now tailor their needs at their level instead of it being something we think about ethereally in Washington, D.C. and say, oh, this just might be great for everybody. Now it's going to be more what's happening in Cheyenne and how can we fix it.
And I'm a doctor in medical school, worked at a VA hospital. In my surgical residency, worked at a VA hospital. We just want to make sure that the veterans of Wyoming know that they should be getting, because they have deserved and earned the best care. We need to make sure we can do that in a frontier state with so many people spread so far and wide.
Perfect. You mentioned the football team. We've got different players. One of your players is the legislature, and we've got a legislative session coming up. Yeah. How can our legislature help you reach veterans better?
That's a great question. I hear this a lot from our states, and I think some of the best ways is invest in your mental health system. Invest in and this is not just for veterans, this is an overall thing. Invest in the tools that they can get help with what they do. The other thing I would say is for veterans who want to stay here in the state, and I'm not as familiar with your state as far as state law, making it easier for veterans to get jobs if they stay here. Okay, mm-hmm. And that includes certification issues, things that, like if they train for one thing that's in the military, but there's a civilian certification requirement, see if there's ways that you can bridge that gap. A lot of states have already done that. I know from a federal perspective, we've talked about it. That's one of the other ways. And then the other ways is just continuing to work with us to get grants to provide for cemeteries, for our nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, in that regard. Other than that, the veteran, we partner with states. The VA takes the bulk of that responsibility of veterans, but we're able to partner with great partners here in Wyoming and other places. So I think looking at how they already currently do it, but then is there other ways that they can help on what I call the periphery. And transportation issues would be a great way we could partner with each other at our hospitals, especially in the remote areas.
Anything else?
How will you communicate to veterans here how you followed up with their concerns after this roundtable?
Well, I think one of the things is, I think it's on the 30th of this month, we're having a VA town hall, which is an open forum to all of our folks. It's getting scheduled at the end of this month. And it's just me talking about issues that they've already heard here. They're going to hear back through, I'm going to be at the hospital later today. They're going to hear, I'm going to talk to them off record about what they're needing, how they need it. And then frankly, this is where you'll hear this around me a lot. In the VA, if our leadership hasn't heard it, then they're not listening. Leaders in the VA have to be leaders. Leaders lead. And too often we have gotten to a situation where we just sort of don't allow that. So leaders have to communicate. So my senior leadership team, I task them with actually having to communicate and make sure that they know, just like when the senator talks about his constituents, how he makes things happen, when he was a doctor, how you make that communication out. I really put that burden on our senior leadership team. I think I know they'll knock it out of the park, but that's how these folks are going to know what we actually have. And then working with the senator through the BSOs and others, they'll see it as well.
And the entire delegation has people on our staff. I have Patrick on mine. We have veterans, people who Patrick's a 20-year military veteran, knows his way through the system, knows the military. So anyone who has any concerns or questions in Wyoming, call my office, call Cynthia's office, call Harriet's office. We are there. We have resources. We know who to talk to. We know how to call. We can solve most problems for most veterans, and we want to be helpful.
Now here's Taylor Staples, our arts and entertainment reporter, to bring us a roundup of some upcoming events in the area this week.
Today, January 23rd, there's a Library to Business drop-in session from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and there's also a Dementia Caregiver Support Group session from 2 to 3:30 p.m. at the library. Later, the Civic Center is hosting another Thanks to the Memories concert with the lead singer of Chicago, Jason Sheff, at 7:30 p.m. On Saturday, January 24th, there's an ice fishing tournament from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Kirk Gowdy State Park, a coffee and catalog session from 10 to 11:30 a.m. at the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens, as well as a paint your own wine glass session from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., also at the Gardens. There's also cat trivia from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Cats and Coffee Connections Cafe. And later that night, there's the annual LCCC Blue and Gold Bash Casino Night at the Blue Federal Credit Union Recreation and Athletics Complex, an 80s night with the $6 Million Band at 6 p.m. at the Lincoln Cheyenne. On Sunday, January 25th, there's a wooden sign making class from 1 to 3 p.m. at Cats and Coffee Connections and a CSO movie music matinee at 2:30 p.m. at the Cheyenne Civic Center. On Monday, January 26th, from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m., the library will show To Kill a Mockingbird as part of their Matinee Movies for Mindful Aging series for adults. On Tuesday, January 27th, there are 2 sourdough classes at the library, one from 1 to 2 p.m. and another from 6 to 7 p.m. Then, the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens is hosting a Veggies for Breakfast cooking demo done by local author and gardener Willie Galloway. In the evening, the library will host Tuesday Night Book Club featuring the book James by Percival Everett. On Wednesday, January 28th, there's a business-themed book club from noon to 1 p.m. at the library, as well as chair yoga and poetry from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. Later, from 6 to 7 p.m., the library is screening PBS's A More Perfect Union, which features directors Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein, with a discussion to follow. Finally, on Thursday, January 29th, this is the first day of Bish's RV Show, which will take place from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Event Center at Archer every day until February 1st. Then, at LCCC, there's a screening of a documentary titled The Librarians from 4 to 6:30 p.m. And finally, from 5:30 to 7 p.m., the library will host its monthly small business showcase, as well as hosting a true crime book club from 6 to 7:30 p.m. For more events, go to wyomingnews.com/calendar.
And before we close out today, here's a quick recap of some of our top stories and headlines from the past week. A new legislative push to make ivermectin available without a prescription in Wyoming is drawing sharp criticism from medical professionals who warn the move could not only endanger patients, but also inadvertently dry up the state's supply of the medication. Advocates say it will increase care and give patients greater medical freedom. Even now, more than a month after being deported and waiting weeks to be returned with the family he left behind in Cheyenne, Carlos Montes Calderon has hopes for returning to the U.S. from Nicaragua. The barber and former Cheyenne resident was arrested by the Laramie County Sheriff's Office in November for not having his driver's license or car insurance. An incident involving a suspect using a stolen deputy's vehicle and weapon to hijack a local family's car has prompted legal action against the Laramie County Board of Commissioners and the Laramie County Sheriff's Office for alleged negligence. Taylor and Zoe Olson filed a lawsuit against the 2 government agencies and 1 sheriff's corporal on December 15th, following an incident in which a suspect, Mandy Miller, was able to apprehend unattended LCSO property and threaten the family with an LCSO-issued weapon. And finally, the company seeking to build a large wind farm northwest of Cheyenne has distributed a letter to local agencies and nearby property owners describing its intention to submit an application to the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality Industrial Siting Council to permit the project on private and state lands, despite the Laramie County Board of Commissioners' denial of the project site plan in September. That's all for this week's episode of Wyoming Watch. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I also wanted to mention that this will be my last episode on Wyoming Watch, as I'll be moving across the country this week, actually. I'll continue my role as the state government reporter remotely for the next couple of weeks to help with coverage during the legislative session. So there's a chance I might be on the podcast here and there for that, but I will transition out of my role with the paper after that. The team here has a plan to keep this content coming for you every week, so be sure to keep checking for it. But just wanted to say thank you to everyone here at the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle for supporting me and this little passion project and helping put it together and keep it up for a year and a half now that we've been doing it, coming on 2 years. And also wanted to say thank you to everyone who has been listening, provides feedback or suggestions or anything like that. It always has truly been pretty fun. On that note, be sure to check back next Friday for more. Thanks and goodbye.